Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, team.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I've been trying to see low-key how many good evenings we can get. I think we are moving at a confident number. Good evening, ladies. Welcome to our fourth capacity building session. Welcome. I'm going to ask, just as a quick icebreaker, it doesn't matter how you look, just let it rip. Let's open those cameras. We don't care guy, whether oko tlabong, whether oko kerekeng, whether oko ntlong. Bulang di camera re bone. Dumelang.
Re crusty jwang nako eo. Re crusty.
It's about exposing. Come on. Let's see. We're in this together. Come on. James, Anele, always two. Where are you? Bonono, no Tando, no Ntogozo. Come on. Talent. Come. We're moving as a team. It's part of us building our group unity, group cohesion right now. Ne? We're breaking barriers. Let's see. Open those cameras. All the way to Zanele, Talent, Jane, going once. Let's come back. Don't kill the momentum. Come. Zanele, all the way to come on. Ma'am Jane, let's go. You're the last person. All the way to last person. Always to the Jane Mar. Hi, little tough fashioning. Good evening, everyone. Hello.
Good evening.
Hey. Good evening.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, look at the Marie camera. Sharp. Now that I know we are all in the room, I just be on standby. Be on standby. You don't know when I will come back and say, yay, put on this camera. So I must stand by. Welcome to the fourth session of the CSW Capacity Building Program. It's actually a sub-regional feminist leadership capacity building program. Sometimes we do a disservice to ourselves and we just say, I capacity building program. Bunki, mommy's in session. Okay, that's it. And so it's actually the sub-regional. So not only are we having a conversation within the context of South Africa, we are also having a conversation within the region to empower more people, to get more people on board, to get more young women particularly involved in the conversation, seeing how we can contribute to cross-cutting conversations, not only at a local level, but also at an international level. And that's why we are very deliberate about really exploring and understanding the lived realities of our people, of us as people, as citizens, you know, in this place, in this country, on this continent, on this planet, in this particular solar system and universe. You know, I can go on and on and on and on. But we need to understand and be able to elevate our lived experiences. Our lived experiences are not just lived experiences, they are quite political, they carry meaning, they carry purpose, even at a spiritual level. We all have a responsibility and a duty that we need to fulfill. So we are here to capacitate at a regional level the young woman, the woman of South Africa, the woman of Tanzania, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Namibia, Lesotho, Eswatini. We are here to empower each other so that we can also influence bigger and higher and more complicated decision-making processes of the world. So as you've seen in the alerts that have been sent, as well as the assignment, Today's session is, our topic is really going to be focusing on economic justice and rights. And if you recall in the introduction, I'm just going to read it out quickly. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, women spent triple the amount of time as men performing unpaid care work and domestic work. And their social protection continues to subsidize the entire economy. In addition to that, an 18-country study poll shows that COVID-19 has intensified women's workloads at home, and nearly half of all women with children at home say they spend more than 5 hours a day in childcare. So that was just an extract that we took and that we've wanted not only to base our conversation on today, but also in terms of, yes, we're having the conversation, we're grounded by the fact that women need to be operating and working in the economy effectively so. But we've seen, you know, in the recent past, including the COVID-19 pandemic, issues around the July unrest in South Africa. You know, we've been dealing with you know, social, economic, political, and environmental shocks. We think about the droughts that have happened in the KZN, the flooding rather in the KZN, the Eastern Cape, even in terms of Northwest. We think about the wildfires and heat waves in the Western Cape and Northern Cape. You know, we think about the drought that is affecting food production and our livestock. We're seeing snow at the beginning of spring for the first time. So many shocks are happening, and each shock presents itself with its own set of opportunities and challenges. And we've seen over time and space that it is women who are hardest hit when it comes to issues around economic participation. And so tonight's session really wants to center the conversation around what does economic justice and rights look like, right? More so, what does economic justice and rights look like in a context where we are in our respective communities? By the way, in the chat box, just type where exactly you are logging in from. If you're logging in from Hammanskraal, say Hammanskraal, Gauteng province, South Africa. If you're in KZN, if you're in Cape Town, if you come on Lokshin, come on Deep Sloot, tell us where you're from so we can also understand who's on the call and where we are joining in from. So that's today's session. Let me go into the formalities. I am the chairperson and founder of Black Women Caucus, an intergenerational feminist social movement, youth-led, that, you know, seeks to find multi-pronged solutions to addressing gender-based violence and femicide. We work across different contexts with different constituencies. We focus on movement building. We focus on popular education, policy development, lobbying, and advocacy. This is what we are concerned about, and we believe our work together is what's going to move the needle, not only on issues around gender equality as a side note, but as developmental issues which should be rooted in gender equality. So today's session, as I said, is going to focus on economic justice and rights, but we also want to bring it home into this program. The program really is aimed at facilitating understanding, you know, promoting engagement in terms of bilateral and multilateral institutions and decision-making processes, including these United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. We are less than 6 months before the completion, number one, of this program, but also in less than 6 months, the women of this world are going to discuss 30 years into the Beijing Platform for Action. This is a collective platform that was formed in 1995, which derived a global action plan to addressing and advancing issues related to gender equality, women's empowerment, and women's rights. And so we have to start asking ourselves some interesting questions. And from the Beijing Platform, we had 12 action points or action priorities. In 2019, we then had the review of the Beijing Platform, celebrating the 25th year since the adoption of the Beijing Action for action platform for action rather. And next year we'll be looking at the 30th year. So we find ourselves in an interesting time of reflection, of thinking, of critical thinking and engagement around where we come from as the past, but also what does the future look like when we speak about women's rights, when we speak about gender equality. And today we are focusing on a critical element, often where women sit on the peripheries, and that is economic justice and rights. I also just want to say we'll be zooming into, yes, the Beijing Platform for Action, but looking more at the Generation Equality Forum, which was birthed during the 25th year in terms of reviewing of the Beijing Platform for Action. And so our guest speaker tonight is going to bring us into that conversation. As Black Women Caucus, we are committed to cultivating the bridge, that zip line between the international discussion and what's happening in our local realities. We believe that our lived experiences, our collective power, our collective voices carry weight that should and must influence decision-making at the highest level, especially in relation to our well-being. So this is what we're going to be discussing today. And maybe just before I allow for Gogsara to come in, maybe something to allow you guys to think about. So as indicated, the Generation Equality Forum was conceptualized, during the review of the Beijing, the 25th review, but was formally adopted. The process really was formally adopted between 2020 and 2021. And so Black Women Caucus, in our commitment to engaging at an international level, are a commitment maker under the Generation Equality Forum, under 3 action coalitions to be specific: economic justice and rights, number 1, gender-based violence, number 2, as well as feminist movement building and leadership, number 3. So this is just to also bring our participants to say, this program is not just happening, comrades. It's happening because we are trying to really effect and agitate and spark the fire of change, sustainable, long-term global change. Okay, let me not get carried away. Gogsara, coordinator of the CSW Subregional Feminist Leadership Program, please come in and welcome. Welcome. That was a very long way of saying welcome to our 4th session. Gogsara, you may proceed.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Give me rights to share my screen. I prepared myself sufficiently today to ensure that I hear this conversation on economic justice and rights very well. I don't know if you can all see my eyelashes and my really ready hairstyle and paintings on my face to ensure that I really listen to this conversation and have some gains. So today I'm going to share with you feedback on the assignment that was given for our 3rd webinar. So this assignment focused on understanding feminism and ecofeminism, organizing the history and the contemporary. So the responses that we got, we asked participants to work in groups, and we were clear that we need you to be in your province, or those that are from other countries, they should group themselves together and work as a group, one group. It's interesting how you participate, you responded. I want to give you this feedback so that we can strengthen. There's 2 people waiting to enter the room. So I think if there's someone who can admit them, or I have the rights to admit them. Thank you. So the whole purpose of this program, why we have set it up, is that we should learn to work together. irrespective of our diversities, our locations, where you're located. If you are in Mpumalanga or Gauteng, you are in the east, west, Rand, or in the north or south, is a way that you can come together and talk about issues of poverty, issues of inequality, issues of gender-based violence. These are the pandemics, 3 pandemics that are affecting South Africa. And I don't have to say much. You know these for over the past 10 years. These are the pandemics. In fact, there was some time when the president was suggesting that we go to another lockdown just for gender-based violence. So we were testing the ground, how you can work together. So as you can see in my screen, I wanted to show you how people responded. So the first, we had then, in response, we ended up having 6 groups, right? Let's see where the groups were from. So we see a duplication of KwaZulu-Natal, which is also appearing as group number 5. We also see a duplication of Gauteng 2 times. Gauteng appears on the first group, appears on the third, on the fourth group, appears on the 5th group. It's very interesting. Then there's Western Cape. So this is interesting that we found each other in different ways, but eventually the groups were formed, irrespective of the fact that we had repetitions. So for example, there's a participant who just worked alone at some point. Womxn worked alone. And as in South Africa, Pretoria. So the instruction is province or country. It's important that you know which province you're located. The chair asked this information for a purpose. We all know that our vulnerability are still classified according to our location. For example, in all the vulnerable groups, people living in farms, they are in the category of being vulnerable. People living in rural areas, they are in a category of being vulnerable, women and so forth. So this is statistical information that is key in our identity. We are coming together here not as middle-class people, it's people, though gender-based violence cuts across all economic status, backgrounds, like it doesn't matter what economic background you have, you get affected by gender-based violence. We have many examples of those. In fact, my close friend, who's a senior manager at the Department of Health here in the province where I'm in now, was involved at some point in beating the wife, and they had to separate. And when you ask him why is he doing it, he says he doesn't know why he did it, but it happened. Yes. So here we had, this type of a dynamic while we're expecting each province to collaborate with their own. We found, for example, Gauteng being repeated. I think it's even 4 times because we have Pretoria here, which is also Gauteng. So as we move along, and you can see the names here, so this program is about learning from each other. It's not about humiliating anyone. Yesterday, I attended a very profound event of BWC, where we were engaging with members who have been with this BWC for a year and more, since BWC was formed in 7 years ago. And the opening note or one of the keynote addresses, I think it came from the chair, was that humility is very important in the work that we do, and there's no one important than another person. We just have different capacities, and my capacity can enhance yours and your capacity can enhance me. Even if it means that I'm just sweeping the floors, my work is sweeping the floors, that work is important for your health, because if the floors are dusty and not cleaned, then we get affected, or all of us who are maybe dancing in the room or toying in that particular space. So the whole idea here is that we are learning, we are co-sharing, and another skill we are learning is deep listening. I'm not sure if you know of this skill. Deep listening means that if you take a queen-size sponge and you just dip it in water, it just absorbs. Sometimes we need that kind of an ear where we just absorb everything. We will begin to see later. We work with the survivors most of the time, so it's important that you don't interrupt their conversation. So we apply this skill everywhere, where at times we just need to listen and act. But of course, where there is integrity, there's respect, there's some sense of accountability. I don't say that you must be a silent feminist. No, you must be vocal, you must know your boundaries, stay in your lane. That's what our national convener normally says, and I've taken that with me. So the whole idea is to share and learn what we did well and where we can improve. So the top 3 challenges that these 6 groups mentioned were poverty, crime, and violence. Unemployment and poverty comes across very strongly, and no understanding of the role of women and the power we have as women. Hey, that power, and never underestimating it is key. And today, the unfair treatment of women in the workplaces, salary discrepancies, while we're expecting still work until you're about to give birth, some of the issues that you raised in groups as top challenges focusing your province. That's why it was important that when you work in a province, you stick into that province and you all start to agree. But you know, in my region, the Kukune region, I think maybe learners dropping out of school is a problem. But another one will say it's not that much. They still carry on until, and then eventually the top 3 will be those that you mentioned, which was very important. The collaboration in having just one voice of the challenges that you are facing in the group. So 3 issues and no quagmires. Then how can the issues be resolved? Who should be involved? Very brilliant strategies you mentioned. Crisis intervention, very key. You know, quite often we have people who are bystanders, other as duty bearers, who are supposed to provide, to make sure that they are an enabler for us, you know, as rights holders, to access the services that are there. Crisis intervention is one of those that sometimes are missing, or most of the time missing. One important issue amongst many that we discussed yesterday was the whole idea of, in your province, in your district, identify a network of social workers, a network of other service providers like forensic doctors and nurses, detectives that can come on board when you have a crisis that needs to be taken care of. I mean, the environmental disasters that we have offices for disaster management, but I'm not sure what is happening. We saw in KZN when there was this snow. On the 4th day or 3rd day, they came, the military, they seemed so unprepared. They looked like antiques like me, treading on the ice as if they are not trained on how to deal with such a disaster caused by air, you know, which has solidified in the form of ice. So are we having people who can swim when we have, these, harsh climatic conditions of hurricanes and floods that the chair has mentioned? So these are the crises of the now that we're facing. So, and are we equipped enough? So you mentioned that as a solution, we need, these components to intervene to these challenges of poverty you mentioned, of inequality and so forth, and a multi-sectoral approach, very key. So we also asked a forward question to say, what can we do? How has such problems been solved in the past? You know, I like the first prime minister of one of the islands where most of you know this musician comes from, Rihanna. So for all these years, Barbados has been a colony, say England. So just 2-3 years ago, they gave it to the country. So it means the country can have his own prime minister. Before they were all under Britain. Can you imagine how other countries are still, you know, under colonial rule? And there's quite a few that are still under colonial rule, and it's not spoken about. She says there's no way we cannot resolve these problems that we have today, such as the climate change, the poverty, the inequality, because in the past we have dealt with apartheid in South Africa, colonialization, slavery. He mentions those as some of the key achievements of the past centuries that we have managed to overcome, which means by looking at the past and taking proactive steps in a multi-sectoral way, as activists, as government, as private sector, to solve the problems of the now that you have mentioned. It's one of the key things that you are saying is possible. It can be done. Campaigns are quite key, and the use of multimedia platforms important. And today we have, as one of the group said, we have the advantage of social media. Even radio has been extended to community radio or media, such as community radio stations, and now the blossoming of the podcasts. And definitely you should plug into there. You're all amazing. Plug into those spaces. We know at the moment we don't have data, but it's a fruitful space for you to be in here today, where you can really see how you are using your data positively, perhaps other than being entertained by TikTok. Also, TikTok is educational in that way. I'm not negating TikTok, but yeah, it's positive. I'm looking forward to hear more about today's session, and thank you very much for collaborating in this assignment. With just a few hassles, you did very well. Now, last thing I request, if you have not submitted your survey, please do so. You might miss wonderful opportunities coming to this forum in the next 6 months. The closing date for the submission is 15 October, so 2 days to come. It's closing date. We might look in extension, but for now, please submit. Thanks to those who have done so. Let's enjoy the session together, and looking forward to maybe share later 1 or 2 things. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you, Koksara. And thank you to everyone really who's been doing the work, you know. The beauty about the relationship we are trying to build in this platform as our second cohort, we started with our first cohort last year, is that above and beyond, you know, just absorbing or sharing of information and promoting education, we also believe the building of relationships, you know, the rapport amongst each other, solidarity, what we call, is very important, even in the work of organizing, of advancing for gender equality in broader society. So it's important that we learn those skills. Often they can come across as very uncomfortable, but it's important to learn the skills around working together, working in team. And I like what said, using our differences as a tool for really getting work done, for bringing our ideas together and finding a common ground. So big ups to everyone who's been committed to the work and the assignments. And we hope to do more of these evaluations of assignments in this kind of format. And as time proceeds into smaller groups so that we're able also to share with you. And so you're also able to reflect on where we are as a cohort in terms of this program. So we move right into the fun part. We are now preparing for the presentation by our guest presenter, Mahadi Buthelezi. And maybe before I go into her biography, I just want to start off with a, sorry, over to, yes. I just want to start off with a quotation from a statement that was issued by the Presidency of South Africa on the 30th of June, 2021. By the way, that was the year that's my son's birthday. And it reads as follows. South Africa is a co-leader of Generation Equality Forum's Action Coalition on Economic Justice and Rights. And the President will use the engagement to articulate strong support for the jointly developed Global Acceleration Plan, which has a catalog of commitments to support women in the care economy, ensure decent work for women, create access to and control of productive resources, including financial inclusion, and promoting gender-responsive, inclusive economies. And this was issued by the Presidency of the Republic of South Africa on the 30th of June, 2021. So when we speak about the Generation Equality Forum, when we speak about the work under the different action coalitions, including economic justice and rights, we're not speaking about a thing that's in the sky, it's in the air. We're speaking about something practical that has been endorsed by the #1 citizen of our country, which is His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa. But part of South Africa's commitment to this work, we've also established working action coalitions in the country. And our guest today is the co-convener of the Action Coalition on Economic Justice and Rights in South Africa. Mahadi Buthelezi is a distinguished leader and a trailblazer, serving as the group CEO of the RB Property Group. With an impressive background in the property sector, she has played a pivotal role in steering the company to new heights of success. A commitment to innovation, sustainability, and inclusive business practices within the real estate domain has marked her visionary leadership. She's also the co-convener of the Pillar 5 of the National Strategic Plan on Economic Power, which is we know that the NSP is a national instrument tool aimed at addressing and finding coordinated responses to GBVF. She has also been at the forefront of efforts to address and eradicate GBV, while championing economic empowerment as a fundamental component of gender equality. Mahadi is the Women's Economic Assembly property sector lead, demonstrating her commitment to advancing women's roles and opportunities within the economic landscape. Mahadi's influence extends globally, as introduced earlier on. She is the co-convener of the Action Coalition on Economic Justice and Rights. And in this role, she actively collaborates with diverse stakeholders to drive transformative change, advocate for economic justice and rights on an international stage. Lastly, she serves as the Alwyn Gauteng Province Chapter's Finance and Women's Entrepreneurship Pillar Lead. Comrades, compatriots, feminists, Osibaka, Bosistere, you, the special person on this call, please help me in introducing our guest presenter, Mahadi Buthelezi. Thank you, and you may join us.
Thank you so much. Okay, just for purposes of this call, I'll just switch on my camera so that everyone can see me. But then I hope you don't mind, Gitu. Can I switch it off afterwards? Or can I just proceed with the video? What's your preference?
Ideally would love you to proceed with your video, but really we want you to be the most comfortable.
Okay, no, I'll proceed. I was just wondering from a bandwidth point of view, but I'll proceed with the camera on. Thank you so much, colleagues, for allowing me to present to you and for this opportunity. So this evening, I thought, when I got contacted by Gitu, to touch on advancing economic justice for women and young women in South Africa, and look at the lessons, look at opportunities, and look at challenges and the path, the path forward. So with that said, also, thank you very much, Gitumezi, for touching on what the president said back in 2021. As you know, colleagues, that we had the Economic Justice and actually the Generation Equality Forum, which took place around that time as well. And there were a good number of commitment makers who actually pledged, in actual fact, at an international level point of view. So with that said, colleagues, I then thought, you know what, for this evening, as I said earlier, let's look at the lessons. Let's look at the opportunities. Let's look at the challenges, you know. So with that, I'm really, really blessed, humbled to be in the presence of young ladies who are vibrant, who are activists. I represent both CSO as well as private sector. So I stand before you to basically discuss one of the most critical issue facing our society. And that is, as we all know, economic justice for women and young women. While we have made significant progress, colleagues, at times we may even say that it's we can't even define it as significant because we as ourselves have not actually seen much or seen something that's tangible that we can touch and feel. However, the road to achieving true economic justice for women in South Africa remains filled with both opportunities and challenges. So from a global platforms point of view, looking at your UNGA, which is the United Nations General Assembly, to CSW, which is the Commission on the Status of Women, economic justice and gender equality are central in shaping the future. Yet turning these global commitments into local realities, coordinated efforts, innovation, and clear understanding of the lessons learned, the opportunities ahead, and the obstacles we must overcome. So, from a South African landscape point of view, if we look at the lessons, if we look at the opportunities and challenges, I'd like just to touch on that. So, in South Africa, women, particularly Black women, right, continue to face structural barriers that limit their full participation in the economy. I'm actually talking from experience being in the property sector, which is white male dominated till today. So, despite well intentioned policies, which our country has, like the broad based Black economic empowerment, the Presidential Women's Economic Empowerment Program, I'm not sure if you know about it or if you are familiar about it, and also the Women Economic Assembly. These are but a few of the initiatives that are there, that are present. And challenges persist, though, in areas such as access to capital, access to finance, access to funding, wage equality, and the unpaid care economy. I think this is what Gitu touched on earlier on. So, looking at the lessons, um, let's look at the policy design versus implementation. One of the key lessons we've learned is that policies, are vital, right? But their impact depends on effective implementation, and also M&E, monitoring and evaluation thereof. While South Africa's target of 40% public procurement for women-owned businesses is ambitious, it has been slow to materialize due to weak enforcement mechanisms and also inconsistent application across the various sectors within our economy and in our country. Looking at unpaid care work, another lesson is that unpaid care work remains a significant barrier to women's economic participation. This is what Gitu touched on earlier as well. Globally and locally, we've seen that countries which integrate care work into economic policy frameworks, such as Bosnia, as an example, or Herzegovina, they see greater parity in workforce participation. Let's look at opportunities. The public procurement and private sector engagement. So with stronger public, these are now what we call triple Ps, public-private partnerships. Programs such as your Women's Economic Assembly, your Presidential Women Economic programs can be leveraged to create opportunities for women entrepreneurs in sectors like technology, agriculture, property, tourism, and so forth. So the private sector has potential to not only meet the government's procurement targets, but to lead in gender-sensitive policies that drive meaningful participation. And if we look at digital economy as well, the rise of the digital economy presents immense opportunities. South Africa can capitalize on this by investing in digital literacy for women, for young ladies, particularly in rural areas, ensuring their full participation in new and emerging industries like e-commerce, fintech, and online services. I think also, colleagues, I need to also touch on ESG, which is your environmental, social, and governance, which is the new buzzword now, which when you do plan and in moving forward is something that you also perhaps need to consider in actually maybe integrating into what you do as well. Now, looking at the challenges, access to funding, access to finance. This is the biggest challenge and continues to be the biggest challenge. I'll just make a perfect example. Be it an SMME to a medium owned company, or even large or Black owned, I'll say Black woman owned, or a Black young woman owned company, it still struggles to access affordable financing or funding, right? With banks and investors often applying more stringent criteria to women compared to their male counterparts. We still see that, even though financial institutions are forever protective and denying this. So this lack of access remains a major barrier for scaling women-led enterprises, be it small, medium, or large. Another challenge, we'd look at persistent gender norms. Societal norms continue to limit women's roles in the economy. And there were statistics released, I think about 2 months or so ago, where it shows that women in rural areas are still, and the predominantly Black women are still unbankable, and there is potential there as well. So despite policy advances, there remains deep-rooted resistance to gender equality in the workplace and the home, particularly regarding shared responsibilities like childcare and household work. I'm not going to really emphasize more on this because Gitu touched on it. So, with these lessons, opportunities, and challenges in mind, let's now explore best practices or propose best practices we can adopt in moving forward to accelerate economic justice for women and young women in this country, South Africa. So, from a global best practice point of view, and lessons from CSW and UNGA. So, as you know, that this happened not so long ago in New York, we saw several global themes emerge that hold particular relevance to our country's journey toward economic justice. So, these conversations underscored the importance of collective action, inclusive policy frameworks, and the transformation of traditional economic systems to reflect the needs of women and young ladies. So, from a lessons point of view, from a global perspective, looking at feminism, multilateralism, a key takeaway was the power of feminist multilateralism, right? Where different stakeholders, governments, CSOs, NGOs, and also the private sector work together to advance gender equality. So South Africa's partnerships need to be strengthened across sectors to ensure that the policies like the Triple BEE are fully implemented, monitored, and lastly, held accountable. Now, in recognition of unpaid care work, globally, the care economy was a central theme, integrating unpaid care work into formal economic systems has been a best practice in countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina, as I shared earlier. So our country can follow suit by developing policies that recognize and compensate care work, freeing women to participate more fully in paid economy. Then we look at digital inclusion. So from a technology point of view, it continues to be emphasized, right, as a game changer for women's economic empowerment. Globally, the Global Digital Compact emphasizes the need to close the gender digital divide, and our country has an opportunity to lead on this on this front by investing in digital infrastructure, ensuring that women and young ladies in rural areas in particular and under served areas have access to technology and also to digital skills training. So from an opportunities point of view, from a global trends point of view, technology and digital skills, our country can seize the opportunity to expand women's access to the digital economy. From research as well, we tend to be lagging a bit behind in this. Through public-private partnerships focused on digital literacy and affordable access to digital tools, care economy reforms, leveraging on global momentum, we can actually push forward reforms to recognize the economic value of unpaid care work, creating social protections for caregivers and expanded access to public services like childcare. So in moving forward, colleagues, looking at the best practices as well, or rather recommendations for our country. So to overcome these challenges and leveraging the opportunities at hand, strengthening the Presidential Women Economic Empowerment Program as an example, and the Women Economic Assembly must be supported with robust monitoring and evaluation frameworks to ensure that the very 40% procurement target that has been in place, that is has been proposed, is met. Because this is where the challenge is from an implementation point of view. The process is happening, but it's slow. It's not as fast as we'd like it to be. the private sector can also play a significant role in providing mentorship, capacity building, and financial support, right? A special task force involving government, CSOs, and the private sector should be established to track progress and to hold stakeholders accountable. Support in terms of women-owned business, be it small, medium, or large. This needs more accessible financing options and innovative options. Blended finance models, as an example, involving public and private investment. This can help lower barriers to entry for women and young ladies. Financial institutions backed by government incentives should also create low interest rates, interest loans, grants, and venture capital tailored specifically for the SMMEs. So mentorship programs supported by the private sector will further ensure that women and young girls have the tools and network they need to succeed into the future. Integrate unpaid care work into the economy. So from a South African point of view, we need to adopt social protection policies that recognize unpaid care work, including compensation for caregivers and the expansion of public child care services. This then will reduce the burden, colleagues, on women and allow them to participate in the workforce. Social protection measures should also extend to retirement benefits and health care for caregivers. So from driving a digital inclusion, we look at the private sector having to partner with the government to offer affordable digital tools and skills training programs for women and young girls, particularly in undeserved areas. This underserved areas, apologies, this will not only close the digital divide, but also enable women and young ladies to tap into emerging industries such as e-commerce, digital marketing, and tech-based services, as I shared earlier. Then, of course, promote gender-sensitive policies in the workplace and expand the programs, the women's economic programs that are already there, that have been introduced, especially after the Generation Equality Forum back in 2021. On advocacy, public awareness, and changing norms. So societal norms that restrict women's economic participation must be challenged. Joint advocacy campaigns led by CSOs, NGOs, and the private sector, and the media, by the way, can actually promote gender equality and challenge harmful stereotypes. These campaigns should focus on shared household responsibilities and the benefits of women and young ladies' economic empowerment to society as a whole. Let's engage men and young boys. Economic justice for women cannot be achieved, colleagues, without addressing the role young men and boys can actually play. Programs should be developed to engage men in gender equality efforts, promote shared responsibilities in the household, and challenge certain gender norms that limit women's opportunities. Then lastly, I'll touch on education and skills development for women and girls. So from a long-term success point of view, this depends on investing in education and skills development for women and girls, particularly in STEM fields. So the private sector partnerships with educational institutions can offer scholarships, training programs, and internships that prepare women for leadership roles in high growth sectors. So in conclusion, as we look ahead to actually beyond 2024, it's clear that achieving economic justice for women and young ladies in South Africa will require a coordinated effort from CSOs, NGOs, and the private sector, and of course, the government. The lessons we have learned, the challenges we face and continue to face, and the opportunities before us all point to the same conclusion. Collaboration is essential, colleagues. Together, we can, in actual fact, build or rebuild our economy where women, young ladies, and everyone thrives, not just as participants, but also as leaders. So, colleagues, this evening, with this humble invitation and this platform I've been actually granted to present to, I wish to urge you to take these best or recommended best practices back, to your provinces, to your organizations and communities, and see how you can best find ways of working together to create a more, I think Ugogo touched on this, to creating a more inclusive and of course just economic future for women, for young ladies, for us all as a country. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you so much. Sure. I've been writing and writing and writing, and I think we can all agree that your session was very informative. Sure. I mean, utlilele runa, you really walked the journey with us, because I think more often than not, when we discuss issues around the economy, the language of the economy, the language of economics is so exclusionary. It almost feels like if you've never studied economics or anything related to that, please just hold on. You know how the language in itself is very, very the language can be very technical. And this is not to say women can't be technical. This is not to say women aren't technical, but the language in itself is meant to be understood from a very at a certain level that might not be easily interpreted, accessible, and comprehensible for broader society. So I really appreciate your ability to walk with us, because I think when we speak about economic justice, people, particularly when it comes to women, the narrative is around it almost feels like they're trying to, create a narrative of men versus women, And I love your emphasis on that. For us to achieve economic justice, we also need to interrogate and promote and facilitate the participation, role, and contribution and accountability of men and boys, But I also loved how, we are in an era where we associate economic justice of the economic empowerment and economic justice of rights of women as a very masculine process. So when we think about, speaking about, especially within our African communities, when we think about women's economic justice and we say we want more women to work, we want more women, equal work for equal value, we are saying we want gender parity in terms of our wages in the workspace. There's an assumption that we are almost also trying to lead into masculinity, right? But what I appreciate about this presentation is also that economic participation, what is deemed, and for those who might hold very conservative views, like myself, the role of women to nurture, to build, to take care, to raise, it is also in itself an economic process and an economic contribution. And so the ways in which the economy and economic growth and the economics of the economics is structured is one that alienates, almost erases, and places women's social reproduction, women's participation, social participation and production on the peripheries of the economy and economic development, yet it is the basis of all economic development and productivity. So really that expansive, understanding and being able to tie the storyline, Mahadi, we really commend you for. But I do also appreciate being able to highlight that, and one of your first points was in the work we're doing. So as we approach Beijing 30 plus next year, and we reflect and we assess the work that's been done, not only on issues related to women's economic justice, but just issues more broadly across the 12 action areas, as well as the GF6 Action Coalition 7 with the peace and security, that we must not underestimate the continuous progress and advocacy and pushback that women have been leading over the years, and Mahadi, you mentioned is that the road to economic justice is a continuous one. And you further went to say that just because it may be slow, just because it may be small, doesn't mean that the change is not happening, doesn't mean that the transformation is not happening. And I think so much in our work, not just in the work of economic justice, but in so many facets of our lives and even our political lives, is that we often underestimate, wins and victories. Oksalayo, guys, a win is a win, And what we need to be more concerned with as young feminists, as young activists, as the critical thinkers, as the agitators, as the teachers, as the learners, is that how do we amplify existing initiatives? How do we bump the cheese up? How do we take things to the next level, right? Because the basis is there, the foundations are there. So with that being said, Hugh, Lina Carrera. I would love to open up for questions, feedback, suggestions, reflections. If you also want to reflect on your own understanding, there was something that was raised that you were not too clear of. This is the time. And I believe this discussion is very important as we progress into the program, because some of the elements raised in Mahadi's presentation and in today's session are going to inform the announcement that's happening towards the end of the session. Okay, for now, I only see Kagiso's hand. Please, I'm encouraging that and then we've got Ribone's hand. If we have questions, reflections, please, thank you. Kagiso, you may proceed, followed by Ribone.
Good evening, colleagues. I trust that we are all good and we are well and are in good spirits. Malibongwe, igama lamakhosikazi. I just wish we had more than enough time to actually just dwell in all that's been said by Mahadi Buthelezi, but I just want to come in and say, in terms of economic justice or equality, I feel like, I don't know, are we still far, or maybe we are the ones that we've been waiting for? Because growing up, I'm a 90s kid, obviously grew up in the 2000s, and this has been preached over and over and over again. So what I'm throwing to the floor is that, is this gonna happen, or are we the ones we've been waiting for? Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kagiso. I think that the last part of the question, are we the ones we've been waiting for, is a question to everyone as well. So it would be great to see people respond to that as well in the chat box. Ribone, you may proceed.
Good evening, everybody. I hope we're all having a wonderful evening. Thank you so much to Mahadi Buthelezi for the wonderful presentation. I think myself also, I have quite a few notes written down. And yeah, we learn every day. My contribution is a question to say that how do we I hear you speak about economic justice and rights, but how are we able to break it down um to the level that we are able to take this information to women in the rural areas, as well as young women that are still in high and that are still in primary, or let's say rather high school, to their understanding, so that when they read maybe this whole document or this piece of paper, they know um what they're reading and they're able to understand it without feeling like, yo, there's a lot of these big English words that I do not understand. So yeah, that's just my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Reboni. Do we have any more questions, or can we give over for some more responses? Okay. Mahadi, Mahadi, Buthelezi, please proceed.
Thank you so much for the questions. I think I'll start with Kagiso. I loved your question and you also answered yourself. Hey, yes, we are the ones we've been waiting for. So with that said, Kagiso, let's find innovative ways of collaborating. And I know that it's not very easy, quite honestly, to collaborate as CSOs, as NGOs, because we often struggle to find ourselves and our positions in collaborating. However, if the collaboration is properly coordinated, we can truthfully find a way of how to best work together, because united we conquer, divided we shall and we will fall. And I loved what Gidu said earlier, and I think it was also Ukoko, that this is the time for us to accelerate. I, for one, as an individual, having been in the business for the past 24 years, do not want to be identified as an SMME, as an example, because of systemic, barriers that continue to exist. So it's very important for us to collaborate, primarily with government, right, and primarily with the private sector. And we need to ensure also, from a government point of view, that those policies that exist are implemented and are monitored and evaluated, and that they are held accountable. Similarly, with the private sector, the same needs to apply. However, we need to continue to agitate if we ourselves want to see that accelerated progress, so that by the time some of us are called beyond this planet, beyond this life, we can know that, you know what, we've left Bokitu behind, we've left Bokagiso behind, they are continuing. But Mushito tshwanetse o tswele pele. We can never give up, not now. And yes, Gitu mentioned that, the work that we do and continue doing, we may not see and recognize yet. However, we are making headways, we are making a difference, and we will, sooner than later, when we collaborate and are properly coordinated, we will conquer. Then following, I think it is Reboni's question, how can we break it down to rural areas and to high school? I love this question because back in 2021 or 2022, under the EJR Action Coalition, we visited the rural area of KZN. And there, a question of language was attended to. We presented ngesiZulu so that they understand, and rightfully so. When even the youth when they were asked what EJR is, there were crickets, you know. So it was then important for one to unpack it step by step so that they fully have an understanding. So the same exercise can be copied everywhere else, you know, especially be it peri-urban, rural areas, or even townships. We need to go to the people. We need to speak the lingo. Ribuwe, sikhulume, kuzwakale. La kunemibuzo, leyo mibuzo ibuzwe iphendulwe. You know, and this is where kancane kancane masilibele sifundisa abantu, when we continue teaching our communities, they will be more enlightened, they will be empowered. Then they themselves will share the information that they've gathered, the information that they've learned. I'm hoping that I've answered your question there, Rebon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I see we've got a hand from Goksara. Before I allow you to just make your inputs, I just want to recognize some of the comments in the chat from Zanele. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We need to engage passionately in a collection of talks and actions in the transformation of the world and of our communities. Absolutely, from Ribone to your response. Rabelani goes on to say, Rabelani, it's good to see you. I think there should be more a policy that holds men accountable for not taking part in taking care of their children. Most women are missing out on economic opportunities because they have no one to relieve them of unpaid care work. Thank you so much, Mahadi, for the presentation. So issues around care work are also coming up quite strongly. Mine is just a comment from Nokukanya. The presentation was informative, and indeed we can address economic injustice and rights by only engaging women, but men also have to take part to understand the role that they play and improve the situation, economic injustice, human rights for all. Those are the questions, Comrade Mahadi. I'll give over to Goksara to go in, and when you respond, please also touch on those questions. Thank you. Goksara, you may proceed.
Thank you so much, Mahadi. So I'll share something, then you will, I don't know whether it's a question or a comment, but you'll find me in the narrative. Is it possible that we can set up a cooperative bank that is sensitive to the plight of women's economic justice issues, using the institutions that already exist, like the National Empowerment Fund, the Skills Fund, Department of Trade and Industry, and the other financial schemes. I think there's also National Women Fund, Empowerment Fund. Is it possible that we can pull that through and set up a cooperative bank and then amplify it with the STEM programs for the feminists to lead the bank? I'm asking this because I once lived in a town where everything is owned by cooperatives, and it's intentional. When multinationals want to come in, what time I was there, the Woolworths wanted to open their outlets. The whole campaign, everybody's car was branded with no to Woolies, blah, blah, blah. And that system is linked, so the cooperative town is called Maleni, is linked to the rural towns, rural villages around, where all the inputs that are traded in the cooperative town, they are sourced from the local suppliers who are in the peripheries. So that I'm just asking from your experience, and I had the touch of that conversation on a cooperative bank. How much do we need to set up a cooperative bank? And can we source it from these industries I'm talking about? An example is that when I go to the bank as a rural woman, my location, which is Stainstorp, is graded, I think, number 6, and secondly, because I'm a woman. So a car which is at the window is selling for 287,000. I end up paying 600,000 in 6 years. Why we're not saying in a cooperative bank there will be no interest? It might be fair that I pay even 100% of the 287, which still doesn't go up to the 680. So I'm not also saying that the interest must be half, at least a considerable interest that we know from experience gathered over years, Mahadi, through your work, that women have one of the best credit records to service their debt when it comes to such consumables. So thank you.
Thokoza Gogo, thank you for that question. Mahadi, before you come in, can I just allow Wamu to go through, and then you can respond to that question, and maybe also some of the reflections in the chat box. Thank you, Gogo, for the question. Wamu, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mama Mahadi, for your wonderful presentation. It was very informative. I have 2 questions. And my first question is, what strategies can young women use to negotiate equitable partnerships in male-dominated industries? And then the second one is, what policy changes actually support women's economic development? Thank you.
Thank you, Ma. You may proceed with your responses.
All right, thank you very much. I think before I proceed to Gogo's questions, can I ask Wamu to just repeat her last question, please?
Okay, my last question was, what policy changes support women's economic empowerment?
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. All right, I think in response to Gogo's inquiry about the cooperative bank, Gitu, if you recall, I'm not sure if you still remember, before the former Minister of Women retired, former Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disability was actually in the process of formulating a cooperative bank. So to answer Gogo's question, there is definitely one that is in the loop, and I would really, really encourage that BWC becomes one of the drivers, and it belongs to women. So perhaps, I'm not sure, Gitu, if you are aware of it. If not, I'll share the details of the person that's driving the initiative within the department, and then so that they're able to also introduce you to the other partners that they've actually engaged or invited or that are involved in the cooperative. I remember there was a time that they were busy looking for members to join. So as an example, you asked in terms of how much is needed. So in this instance, I remember anything from 200 Rand to 500 Rand to 1,000 or more, whatever anyone could afford. They were actually welcomed to actually participate in the cooperative. But I'll definitely give Gitu the contact details. And then please, I would encourage that you touch base with the department so that you are part of that initiative. And then I'm coming to Wamo. What strategies can young women apply in terms of working, especially also in male-dominated sectors. Look, Wamo, the beauty right now in this day and age is that as much as we've been making the noise, but I'd like to believe that we have now laid a foundation of some sort. So from a strategy point of view, there are plenty of CSO and NGOs and a good number, not that many though, of corporate South Africa that are now embarking on generation equality. So from my end, I would recommend that you start there. Use us, use our sweat, the little foundation that we've laid for yourselves. Quote us, quote those organizations, quote those CSOs, quote those NPOs, and from a strategic point of view. But it is important that everything is now accelerated, or the agitation continues. Because if we do not do that, I think, if I'm not wrong, someone made mention that we can only see a difference in around 2050. Some of us won't be around at the pace that everything is going at. So should we need robust acceleration, we need to continue to actually agitate, but find a brilliant way of how to best agitate. This now means collaborate with the right people, coordinate with the right people, knock on the right doors, but make sure that you do not tire. But in this instance, collaboration is the quickest and fastest strategy I can also recommend. Now, from a policy change point of view, again, there are a good number of policies that are now being introduced. The challenge that we are seeing, Wamo, again, which we've been seeing, is on implementation. It's on implementation. The person behind the desk becomes a challenge, because we are told that our country has the best policies. However, 30 years into democracy, some of those policies have not been implemented. So another question that I can maybe also pose and throw back to you as a collective, colleagues, is, if we do honestly say that our policies are the best and have, however, not been adequately implemented, are they implementable? I think I just, please advise if I've answered your question there, Wamu, and also Gogo. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mahadi, for such a No, you really took it to the next level. When we spoke about a learning session, and I'm really happy that you brought that learning energy and the sharing of information. There are many initiatives that I'm hearing for the first time through you, but it's also quite interesting to see the progress that has been made. Sometimes we think because we are no longer there, the work has stopped, but the work has been continuing and at different levels. And I think the biggest takeaway from your presentation, we can all agree, is that really at the core of economic justice and rights for all, particularly for women, especially Black women, is collaboration. So we must be willing to collaborate, even in our communities, in our industries, in our sectors, when we do our work to inform, to drive any real sustainable change. It's really rooted in collaborating with a common vision and a common plan. Thank you also, Mahadi Buthelezi, for a super, super informative session. Colleagues, comrades, feminists, for your participation and for your ears. The conversation still continue. as you know, the session is just building up. We're building into our archive, our study guides of the tools that we need to take our work and our ideas and our ideology a bit forward. So thank you so much. We now move on to the next agenda point, which is announcements. And really, I'm going to give over to Koksara to provide some more information. But I just wanted to alert the team to three key aspects of the memorandum of agreement signed between Black Women Caucus and our participants. And Mahadi, so Black Women Caucus is in its second cohort of running the sub-regional feminist leadership capacity building program. And it's, you know, the participants here have been selected. This is what we believe are the best, the new, fresh talent in terms of feminist work, feminist organizing, advocacy, policy development, and so on and so forth. And so they're part of this program. But our work between our participants as well as Black Women Caucus is guided by core values and principles. And I just want to remind us all, in the purpose of the Memorandum of Agreement, Black Women Caucus defines this program, or rather the purpose of this program, is to enhance participants' understanding of gender equality, women's empowerment, and the work of multilateral institutions and processes, including the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. In addition to that, what we believe is the necessity or the building blocks of this work is around participants gaining knowledge and skills to contribute effectively to advancing gender equality in their respective contexts. We take it a step further in this MOA and we say, what are the obligations of participants? And, you know, there are key 4 obligations, including your attendance in sessions, number 1. Number 2, completing the assignments and readings. Number 3, respecting, you know, our engagement and how we engage with each other and participants and our facilitators and presenters. But most importantly, is to apply the information gained in this work for the advocacy work of gender equality in real life. So we're here teaching, creating this platform of co-learning, of co-creation, so that beyond the learning process, we want to see what implementation looks like. However, us too, as Black Women Caucus, have obligations to you as participants, to you as a presenter. Number 1 is to ensure that we provide course materials, including presentation, handouts, and resources. Number 2 is to facilitate interactive sessions and discussions. And this is what we're hoping the first part of the program has been able to do. But number 3 is to also ensure that we create a space for requirement. So creating an enabling environment for this learning and teaching to happen. So I believe that it's so important that we always go back to the basics of why we've started this relationship. And as Black Women Caucus, as part of our commitment to investing in leadership, investing in feminist movement building, we are looking to put what we have learned over the past 4 sessions, beyond that, before that, into practice. This looks like saying that we've observed the level of participation, we've observed levels of engagement, we've observed the platform and participants at a collective and individual level. And we really just want to take things to the next level. And so this announcement we want to make is part of our commitment to say, how do we take things to the next level? Koksara, please come in yes, thank you.
So thank you very much, everyone. And this announcement is about how visible you have been in the program, how you have been able to comply with our, criteria for being in the group, or according to your memorandum you signed. It's taking it forward now. Using that criteria, we will be visiting certain communities, collaborate with you, your organization, So we will select those participants who have been active and are consistent and they are complying. It may not be all of you, maybe 10 or 20 organizations do activities that are community-based, focusing on UNCSW. There will be some small support maybe for catering and transport for participants. We hope that you host this activity as local as possible, preferably in your nearest school or your nearest community hall or your church where you normally go. So we want to localize everything in this program so that UNCSW goes to the people, to the marginalized, to the grassroots, where the struggles are. So that is the announcement that we have. We will keep you updated on the developments, and when it's time to start, we will communicate in the group and then directly with those that have been successful to be selected to implement the localized activities of UNCSW. This also came during your application process, where your future ambitions, or when you were asked what are you going to do with this program or the knowledge, you said you want to share it with your local community. So this is that level where we're moving to. Thank you so much. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Koksara, and special thank you to Mahadi Buthelezi, the co-convener on the Action Coalition on Economic Justice and Rights, and the Group CEO of RB Property Group. Thank you so much to our participants from as far as Swaziland, Zim, South Africa, KZN, Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Gauteng. Thank you so much for your participation in the session. Please, we are saying look out for further announcements in relation to some of the support we're going to be looking to provide with the implementation and thinking, program design, support, M&E around small interventions we can address in our communities to take the work we're doing and make it practical. Thank you so much for offering us your time, your patience, your heart. These conversations are not meant to end here. You know that we still appreciate your feedback on and your initial reflections on the session. Please do drop us text on the WhatsApp group as we reflect on the session. Also, Mahadi Buthelezi, re a leboga. As Black Women Caucus, thank you for your commitment, not only to the feminist agenda, but Buthelezi has been, in fact, I would say she's beyond an ally. She is even a young feminist at heart who has been doing this work, advocating and ensuring that young women are a part of decision-making processes, but also being able to hold quite strong social and moral principles and values. And those are one of the things I really, really, really appreciate and admire about you, your ability to keep your morals, key morals and values and principles in the work that we do. Thank you so much, comrades. Have a lovely one. Let us keep in touch for more updates. If you haven't completed your survey on the evaluation, please do so, as Koksara has mentioned. And God bless. Good luck for the remainder of this week and the remainder of the month of October. Love and light, guys. Bye-bye.
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 Bye.
Bye. We forgot group photo. Bye.
Yes, bye.
Bye.